It's called the Midnight Gospel. You invited me to do this many, many months ago. And I've been nervous ever since. Can I tell the truth real quick?
Okay. Don't go too far now.
I am terrified of you. That's the truth. I realized that the way I feel about you is the exact way that I feel about love, which is that it's terrifying. I don't feel like I deserve it, but I desperately want it in my life. And I think that's the way that I feel about you, Ram Dass. So, one question that I had for you. How do we love the part of ourselves that hates ourselves? Where the universe is saying to you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And you say to the universe, you couldn't possibly love me. No, no. How do you love that resisting part of yourself? How do you let yourself love that thing which seems to be creating a barrier between suffering and grace?
Instead of the term, how can we love ourselves more, I'd like to ask, how can we accept ourselves more? In the way most of us have been socialized, that the parent is under pressure to make the child socially functional. And in doing that, they emotionally, whether they intend to or not, reward and punish the child for behaviors. When that starts very early, before there is a lot of reasoning process between the parent and the child develops certain emotional feelings that certain ways it is in its natural state are not acceptable. And the result is some feelings of unworthiness or inadequacy or something in most human beings. Very few people ever come through socialization unscathed in some way or other. I mean, that's not an unfair statement, I don't think. The way the society has to deal with a child's impulses to get it to be socialized usually is left with a feeling that somehow I'm bad. I have these things that are not acceptable. Then you build this social structure, and often what you end up with is a personality that's constantly looking to the world and other people. Do you approve of me? Do you like me? Am I good enough? Am I acceptable to you? And have I achieved enough? And you get an A for effort, and you feel good. And if you don't get the A, it's not like you feel nothing, you feel bad. And it's as if the baseline is negative, not zero. Do you hear the issue that I'm talking about? Now, so that you're constantly using your life experiences as a way to disprove a basic negative feeling about yourself. That's a very, very common thing in social structure and in human development and ego development. the minute you get near humans, it's interesting that you immediately go into a judging mode. You come into better and worse. And you do that out of your own insecurity. You do that out of your own need constantly to be reassuring yourself. Appreciate your humanity. I'm Ram Dass, and I've worked on myself, and I'm supposed to be a loving, present, clear, compassionate, accepting. Oftentimes, I get tired, I'm angry, I'm petulant, I'm closed down. Now, for a long time, I'd get into those states, and I would feel really embarrassed, because that isn't who Ram Dass is supposed to be. So, I had to risk my truth. I had to risk being human with other people, and realize that what we offer each other is our truth. And our truth includes all of our stuff. And the first thing I had to do was accept my own truth. I had to allow myself to be a human being. I had always assumed the way to God was to deny your humanity and embrace your divinity. And then I realized that the way to truth might be through acknowledging the fullness of where I found myself to be, which was my humanity and my divinity. And not reverence it or judge it, just appreciate it, just allow it, allow my humanity. So I have gotten to the point now where I am what I am much more, and some people like it and some people don't like it, and if they like it, that's their problem, and if they don't like it, that's their problem. I don't take it all on myself. It's a slow process. It's a slow process. Now, what I found was that as I started to allow myself to be human more, just allowed what I am, things changed much faster in me. I mean, things fell away more quickly. It was as if I was locked into a model which was based on that negativity, that dislike of myself. And once I just allowed that I am human with all the foibles, things started to flow, and I could feel change occurring in myself. And then I would start to experience my own beauty. And it frightened me, because it was so dissonant and discrepant from the model that I had cultivated of myself over the years, that I had to do good in order to be beautiful. I've begun to expand my awareness to be able to look at the universe as it is and see what is called the horrible beauty of it. Because there's decay in all of it. I mean, I look at my hand and it's decaying. And it's beautiful and horrible at the same moment. And I just live with that. And with that, I start to see the beauty in it. So we're talking about appreciating what is. Not loving yourself, as opposed to not liking yourself, but allowing yourself. And as you allow, it changes. That's about, I think that gets behind the polarities. I think that's what's important. Okay?
It's wonderful. Thank you. This story, the beautiful story of you meeting Maharaji. And I think about the trust it must have taken you to surrender completely to Maharaji. I think about that leap of faith. To me, that seems like you had to take this dive into a singularity where you don't know what's going to happen after you make that jump. And I feel as though I'm perpetually on the precipice of making that jump, that idea of diving into whatever that is. And people like you, the mystics, they say this is an ocean of love. Jump in. It's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. But for people like us, the neurotics, we make a house on the very edge of the diving board, and and that's where we spend our lives, listening to people like you call up from the ocean saying, I'm not kidding, it's great, take the jump. So the trust is an issue for me, because I think that you're inviting all of us in a certain way to die. And it's a terrifying thing. And I always wonder about what was the last thought in your mind before you took that leap? What was that final thought before you dove into that sea?
Well, funny that you should choose that metaphor.
Why did I email you? Was it trust? Oh, I wish it were something as noble as trust. It was pure, abject depression. I was in a basement. I was literally in a basement. I was, in the end of a relationship. She was living upstairs. I was living in the basement, playing video games and smoking marijuana nonstop, just trying to forget everything. And that brings me to a question that I had for Ram Dass, which is, you wrote Be Here Now, and that book, it exploded into our culture, and so many people I've spoken with have said that is the spark that set them on their spiritual path. And I don't think that you can calculate how many lives have been changed from the courage you had to write that book.
One fellow stopped me a minute ago, and one of us, and he asked if I would speak about aging. The greening of elder care. That's a nice one. I like that. I think that aging is a process that goes on in nature, and we're part of it, and the fact that we don't see aging as beautiful is a problem we should work with instead of recreating the world to make believe it doesn't exist. I saw how deeply pervasive a definition of aging as something to be warded off or something not to be enjoyed. Not to be enjoyed. Imagine that. A whole section of your life not to be enjoyed. Either because you're afraid of death, or because you're caught in a dysfunctional mythology. I've certainly met people with illnesses that are profound illnesses who are honoring and caring for their body as best they can with whatever wisdom they have. But they aren't lost in the storyline. The fact that they have an illness hasn't redefined their reality. They are not ill, they are a person with an illness. And in our society, aging is a pathology. It's a failure. There's something wrong. We don't really want to see you because you're our future that we're afraid of, so we'll send you to beautiful places. We'll be happy. This feels like Brave New World. It feels like Brave New World. It seems to me that you and I are part of the segment of civilization. We are not exclusively, we're just part of it, a tiny part of it, that is developing increasing awareness in a pretty largely unconscious system, which is, I mean, the unconsciousness of our living in ways that are destroying our chances of continuing to live. That's pretty unconscious. And we're doing it left and right, every one of us, every day, all the time. I mean, you talk about denial, we are all in it right up to here. Right up to here. Increased numbers of homeless people. People who have fallen through the cracks of the social system. On and on. And what I experience is but I would feel that you and I, in the remainder of our lives, face some profound changes. We face the potential of coming very close to chaos. Because you just take the difference between the rich and the poor, which is one of the major destabilizing influences in a society. Individualism out of balance, without a sense of identity within groups, within community. With this wonderful prefrontal lobe runs amok. It runs amok. If you've spent your whole life, as many of you have, creating a secure situation, that word secure is in jeopardy. And when you contract, your heart closes, you go up into your mind, and when you get into your mind, you cause a lot of trouble. Because the mind in the service of fear, the mind, the quality of the thinking mind is it thinks about things, so it sees everything as an object, so all people become them. And they must be dealt with in order to protect you. And it's extremely interesting to anticipate that this is not a stable situation, that it's going to change. And the way it's going to change, if you have a vested interest in holding it the same, you're going to be pushing against the change, because the change is going to represent a threat to your existence. And I would say you and I are in training to find a place in ourselves and in the way we live our lives where we are not so dependent on the forms of existence that we freak when it changes. That we freak in the presence even of increasing chaos. Because it's going to be at that moment where those people who have some tiny degree of equanimity will be that thing around which can coalesce a shift that is healing instead of ultimately destructive. I mean, I think that society still thinks it will solve everything with our minds. And I don't think that's the case. I do not think that's the case. Now, there's another dimension that's sort of in here. It's got to be played in. When you as an individual feel very threatened, one of the things you do is you align yourself with groups because you feel power through, like you feel power through the church. You feel power through identifying with a country. Like we're Americans. What that represents, that kind of power. It's like the British Empire being brought to its knees by I mean, the sun never set on the British Empire. It was everywhere, all around the world. And Gandhi said there's going to be change and the English are going to have to leave, but it's important that they leave as friends. It's important that whatever changes go down, there be the optimum amount of compassion. And for that compassion to exist in your and my hearts, we have to be able to deal with uncertainty, change, chaos, loss of power without immobilizing fear, or without the depth of the fear that makes us go into massive denial and massive violence to other human beings. But you and I also are on Earth at this moment in bodies and have a curriculum, and that curriculum has to do with doing as our hearts dictate, doing what we can to relieve suffering. Just looking at just what is and not going under into, oh my God, oh, I wish it hadn't, oh. To the extent you hold a model of how it used to be or how you wish it were that prevents you from seeing what is, better luck next life. Because you're in for a lot of suffering. Because the suffering is the clinging of the mind, the not looking at what is. But who you are, it's just no time, no space, no birth, no death, no coming, no going. Form. Nothing to do. All just phenomena occurring. Life, death, change, chaos. Here comes death. It's letting go. It's letting go. It's letting go. Here we are. It's letting go and listening to the deeper powers of the universe. It turns out that in our relation to the earth, we aren't the masters of the game like we thought we were. We're just part of the system. It's a major change. I grew up in being taught in science that we could manipulate the physical universe in such a way to make us happy. And I never remember the discussion of what it would do to the physical universe. Oh, I can't bear it. It's so terrible. Well, we'll wait. Because you gotta bear it. You don't have any choice. So you're gonna bear the unbearable before you're done. Either your own death or somebody you love or the whole system. It's very interesting to try to be conscious, isn't it? It's more fun than not being conscious, I'll tell you. But it takes a while to figure that out. It isn't as trippy. It isn't as trippy. You and I are in training to be free. We're in training to be so present, so spacious, so embracing into ourselves, not looking away, not denial, not closing our hearts because we can't bear it. The statement, I can't bear it, that's what burns you out in social action. The being in presence of suffering and contracting. The contraction starves you to death. When you close your heart down and protect yourself from the suffering, you can't stand it. Because what happens is you close off the being fed by the life situation. Because if you can stay open, the suffering and the joys and the stuff of life, all of it, it's like living spirit, and it just connects to your living spirit, and there's a tremendous feeding going on. You go to funerals and the grief, real grief, brings people so close together, and it gives them life experience where often they've been deadened into their minds and into their closed hearts.
No, it must have been my imagination. It makes me realize how desperately alone.
That's why trauma is so profound. It cuts through. A frightened person contracts. When they contract, they go into their minds. When their minds contract, they can't risk. It's a low risk strategy. So it's reiterating what they know in order to feel safe. And that judges everybody else as a threat to their safety if the fear is great enough. and everybody's them, and you're isolated, and you're very hungry. It's very lonely being that isolated. And the isolation has nothing to do with the social reality. It has to do with your own mind. And once you see all this, what else is there to do but keep working on becoming conscious? No big deal. Nobody's asking you for anything. You'd be a fool not to do it. You'd be a fool. It's just like you got to perpetuate your own misery and suffering and everybody else's if you don't. And the other thing is, do it joyfully. Do it joyfully. And when you meet somebody that's suffering, what do you have to offer them? You could offer them your empathy. Oh God, I just can't imagine how bad that suffering must be. That's a good thing to offer. Because they feel somebody else is listening to them. The other thing you can offer them is your joy, is your presence, is you're not getting caught in it all. That combination of being empathetic means you're caught, means your heart is breaking because you understand that the intensity of their experience. Then your acts are compassionate. That is where the root of compassion is. The root of compassion is not empathy. That's kindness, and that's good. It's great, but it is not the ultimate compassion. The ultimate compassion is the act which has the potential to relieve every level of suffering. Not just the food in the belly or the mattress for the night. It relieves the suffering that comes from separateness. And the suffering that comes from separateness is only when you are present with another person, not when you are separately present. It just seems that we touch moments where we feel deeply connected. Then a moment later, it's a new moment. And we want to cling to the experience. I invite you not to cling. I invite you to open to the next moment and let it have its own richness. So we're going to do a final thing together. And afterwards, we're going to go out into the universe. And suddenly we'll be in cars, on roads, in homes, cooking suppers, doing laundry, answering telephone calls, being charming, looking at television, reading the papers, responding to the calls of help around us, fighting with people. Such a rich diet that photo faces us. How couldn't you be ecstatic at the opportunity? I invite you to look at your life just that way, as a most remarkable a curriculum. When I was with Aldous Huxley years ago, when we were together, there were just a few words he kept using. One was extraordinary. And I realized that everything in life is extraordinary if I just want to look. I know there are many questions that are unanswered. And I can tell you that if you were to quiet your mind down, you would know exactly what the answer is as well as anybody else would. And if you still don't trust yourself, find anybody else and ask them the question. And if they say, oh, I don't know, say, well, look and find out. Because we have to help each other recognize who we truly are. Because we've had such a bum rap for so long. Poor schnook that I am. If only I could awaken and taste the beauty of the universe. enough already. We are so busy not being awakened. It's a real addiction. We are abused. We've been closed down. But being mindful of it, it all dissolves before our very eye. What was the whole journey about? Whatever sufferings you're dealing with, whatever fears or anxieties, don't deny them. Don't get lost in them. Denial, invest them. Just go on, allowing them to continually be grist for the mill of your awakening. What hurts most? What is the nature of the suffering that is moving you most deeply at this moment? Let's just get the mosaic of it all, if we can. What is the suffering that calls to you, that hurts?
Death of loved ones.
My dad is an alcoholic.
Hunger in a world of plenty.
The way we lash out at each other because we're suffering ourselves.
I fear suffering.
Many of us in this room could say exactly that same thing. And we've got to listen to hear where we feel guilty and that makes us feel better. Or where we say, well, I've got a lot of work to do. So trust the process that's going on. Trust that you're caring about the earth and you're caring about things, and just keep that quality of the compassion of the heart, and that just what you're saying now, that's the doorway to the next process. Don't make it into a big thing. It's just another thing. It's just another thing. Because you're dealing with lots of suffering all the time. Family, friends, society, the political oppression, all the news, you're dealing with it all the time, all the time. So keep opening your heart and loving people more and more, and you'll become very aware of their suffering.
Suffering is not so much an invitation to minister or to be the alleviator of suffering as an opportunity for solidarity, and a solidarity, a connection that would not otherwise have happened. And I bet a lot of you have experienced that. What people are most grateful for, if you noticed, is not that you're alleviating their pain, but that you're noticing it, or that you're receiving it, or that you're being there with them.
Love everybody. But then he said, love everybody and tell the truth. Love everybody and tell the truth.